Welcome to Kind Animal Services. My name is Kelsey, and the topic I want to talk with you about today is reinforcement. Reinforcement is so absolutely critical in everything that is dog training and behavior, and really, for that matter, every type of animal. This is definitely not something that can be overlooked, but I find that in many classes, people tend to overlook it. They think that they can just get away with not reinforcing their animal for the behaviors that we're working towards. And this is where I really want to kind of dive into in this topic. Now, let's start off first with what is a reinforcer? How does a reinforcer work? What is it? And a reinforcer is, simply put, something that is going to increase the likelihood of a behavior happening again in the future. Reinforcers also kind of build behavior. They support the behavior, basically. Maybe that's how I'll put it. A reinforcer supports a behavior. A reinforcer is the consequence that supports the behavior that it follows. So, reinforcers are happening all the time. There isn't like one thing that is a reinforcer. Food is often used, and people are like, whoa, I don't want to use food. But there's a reason why food is so powerful, because it's a part of our innate. We're born with food as a reinforcer. We walk into this world and food is an automatic, one of the first reinforcers that we come in contact with. And I say we because we're animals too, and so this topic actually applies to all of us. It applies to us humans, it applies to our dogs, our cats, our parrots, our horses. It's so valuable. So reinforcer is anything that is going to support, that's going to build, that's going to construct. You can use so many words, but it is something that is basically driving that behavior to continue in the future. How do you know if a reinforcer is actually working? And how do you know, or how do you test what is reinforcing and what is that reinforcer? Because reinforcement is such a broad topic. It's something that, again, it's not just food, but food is super valuable. It's water, it's sleep. Anything that you crave in your body is a reinforcer. It is asking and begging you to do something. You're getting those cravings of sorts. You're hunger, you're thirsty, you're tired. And all of a sudden, those are motivating operations. If you're tired, then sleep, a quiet place to sleep. Safety might become really important. So safety would be a reinforcer. Sleep might be a reinforcer. Peace or quiet might be a reinforcer. So the reinforcer is that thing that supports whatever it is your goal that you're trying to get to. And that's all behavior is. Behavior is just kind of a goal-oriented, in most cases, a goal-oriented task that we do, that our dogs do. They sit for what? They're going to sit for a lot of different reasons. Maybe they just want to be pet. Maybe they just want your attention. Maybe they just want cute talk to you. They want to interact with you or engage with you. So that's, reinforcers really need to be broken out of this box of reinforcers are food. It just happens that food is probably one of the most punchy, most powerful, and most easily controllable reinforcers we have in our pocket. And that's why it's our most utilized tool in our toolkit when it comes to training. Reinforcers are something that you really have to think about in terms of supporting the behavior that you want. So if you don't reinforce, you're going to weaken that behavior. You're potentially punishing it, in which case it won't happen again. You really have to pay attention to what those moments are with your dog that are reinforcing. often opening the door is reinforcing. And not all reinforcers should be held above an animal's head, and they don't need to sit to get the door open. The fact that they went to the door in the first place and asked to go outside, you're reinforcing them going to the door by opening the door. It's such an easy concept, but it's such a hard concept to really truly internalize. And I'm not expecting you to internalize it to the extent that a behavior professional has, but I do think that it's important for the standard pet owner to start to understand what is driving these behaviors they're seeing in their animal. So your dog is barking. That means that it's being reinforced time and time again. And so it's maintaining or even escalating the behavior. So that's how you can tell if it's working, is if you're getting the behavior to repeat, or you're maintaining the behavior, which means it is repeating at the same standard or the same intervals as it was repeating previously, then you know you have a working reinforcer. So that brings me to my next point, is the important key takeaway from this is going to be reinforcers are determined only by the behaving individual. Only. Or the behaving entity, if we're talking about different types of behaviors. But in the form of like dog training, again, the dog actually determines what is a reinforcer. You, as the pet parent, do not determine what the reinforcer is. So it's kind of the age-old question that as a trainer I get a lot. People come in and they say, well, I tried food, it wasn't working. Okay, there's some valuable information in that statement. I tried food and it's not working. It's not working. Then the food that you are trying, the specific food that you are trying in the situation you are trying to apply it, is not a reinforcer. We better go find the reinforcer. But in that situation that you're telling me about, if food is not working, then that is not the reinforcer. Don't give up on reinforcement. It just means you need to dig further. Maybe you need to up the value of the food. Maybe it's that specific food. Maybe you're using kibble in a situation where it calls for something more tasty than kibble in order for it to then hold value. So you must kind of continue to ask questions. Reinforcement is always applied. It's always there. It's always lingering. Even when you have punishment, you usually end up having reinforcement right there. You know, these things all go hand in hand. Reinforcement is always there. It's almost always present. And so to say that, you know, you don't have a reinforcer, there are times where reinforcers can be very hard to control. And that is when we are talking about animal chasing and prey drive. Prey drive can be kind of an instinctual reinforcer where the animal is biologically designed to chase, hunt, kill. So there are some things that are reinforcers that are extremely hard to control. A main one that I hear a lot is squirrel chasing, because you can't control the squirrel, and the squirrel is the reinforcer. And so you have a couple options with things that are really reinforcers that are really hard to control. You have management options, so, you know, fencing and leashes and various ways to shoo the squirrels out of your way before the dog comes across them, kind of clear your path. You have, you also can utilize trying to compete with that reinforcer, so trying to find a reinforcer that is of equal or greater, preferably, value than the reinforcer that they are after in that situation. So if they're after squirrels, then bringing out the stake sometimes is a high enough reinforcer to trump the squirrel chasing sort of reinforcer. So that's kind of one of those things, is trying to come up with a competing reinforcer. And this is why reinforcers are so much fun, because there's often and sometimes more than one reinforcer that can be applied in any given situation. So you have to be creative. You've got to think about, I find for like squirrel chasing dogs, they're often also ball fanatics, or can be ball fanatics, or love to play because that movement is reinforcing to them, and they want to chase a squirrel and move, and that movement is also playing into that reinforcement. And so if I can provide something that is equally as entertaining and provides a similar reinforcement, movement being one of those and chase being another reinforcer, if I can provide something like ball play in contrast to chasing a squirrel, sometimes I have to just carry a ball, and if I bounce that ball a couple of times, I get the dog's attention, and then I can reinforce with a ball toss for them looking away from the squirrel and provide a different reinforcer that sort of comes to the same end in the dog's case. Again, you have to be really creative with these reinforcers. Nothing is black and white. Every individual is going to be different, and the individual dictates what is reinforcing. So keep trying different reinforcers if you're struggling with something. Again, up the food reinforcement. The other piece I probably should mention is that reinforcement is specific to the situation and to the exact reinforcer that is coming. So kibble and steak are two different reinforcers. Yes, they're both food-related reinforcers, but they're different reinforcers and they hold different values. So that's just something to kind of put in your brain as well, where if a dog's really tired, squirrel chasing might not be the reinforcer in that at the end of the day. If they've played ball all day and they've had a big hike or they've done something else, they might find that squirrel chasing is no longer as valuable as it had been when you started your hike. You start your hike and they're like, I'm going to chase every squirrel in this forest. And you get to the end of your hike and the dog's like, there's a squirrel. And then keep walking. So reinforcers change value all of the time, depending on the circumstances surrounding them. So that's another piece you have to kind of take into consideration. There's a lot here to look at. And my goal is just to get your brain and wheels turning and realizing and being able to identify some of these reinforcers that are probably at play in your home and around your dog. All right, the final thing about reinforcement, and I saved this for last because to me this is common sense, but I know that it's not common sense for the average person. And so I think that this is really important for me to just put out and say before I close up or wrap up this sort of lecture, if you will. Bribing. So many people think, well, if I have a treat, then aren't I bribing? Or what about coercion? If I'm withholding the treat, if I'm going, you can't have your ice cream until you eat your broccoli, that's coercion or bribing or whatever. It's that dangling the carrot or removing the carrot. And this type of thing, and this is why we did those reinforcement cues in the worksheet, this type of thing is not okay. This is not what we're doing. This is not what reinforcement is. Reinforcement is not saying, look over here, I have a treat in my treat bag. Look, I have a treat. Wiggling treats in front of your dog's nose. That's not reinforcement. The idea behind reinforcement is that it is the consequence of the behavior. Reinforcement only becomes available after the behavior has occurred, never shown before the behavior. Now, there's one sort of place where that statement is going to fall apart, and that's in luring, where we take the treat and we put it in front of our dog's nose and we're going to lure the animal around where we want them to go, and sometimes that's kind of bribing. There are ways to not use luring, and I am not someone who is super keen on using luring versus other methods. I'm really not a huge fan of luring, but I do utilize luring, and you will see luring in pretty much all of my basic introduction classes. And the reason why is because luring gets results quicker. When you put the reinforcer in front of the dog's nose, the carrot, carrot on a stick type of communication, you get some of that behavior change quicker. So when using luring, whenever I do utilize luring as a method of training, I am very quickly removing that lure from my hand, and I'm going to fake it. I might put my hand up like this and be like, look, I have a treat, sit. And I draw my hand up and I draw their nose up. And then guess what? They put their butt down on the ground. Well, I didn't actually lure because I didn't have anything in my hand. I open my hand and go, whoop, faked you out. But I reach into my bait bag behind me or my treat bag, and then I give them a treat. So the treat was not bribing. Did I have treats on my persons? Sure. Is that bribing? No, I'm not necessarily going to give you one. I just like to carry them. It's a fashion statement. If you're wearing your bait bag or treat bag a lot, then, and sometimes you give reinforcement out of it, sometimes you don't, then you're not bribing. That's just part of your fashion. I do want to point out a little bit about coercion. Coercion, which is basically kind of giving your animal an ultimatum or no option, where you kind of close down all the doors. And the thing is that here's one of the most valuable reinforcers that exists. Control in a situation is one of the highest, most valuable reinforcers that you can possibly find. Almost like food. Having control over your own body, your own situations, your own behavior, when you're empowered to have control, that is a reinforcer. So allowing your animal choices within a training environment. They can say, no thanks, I don't want to train right now. And we respect it. Then we also ask, okay, why don't they want to train right now? It's valuable information to us because it lets us know that what we're doing is not reinforcing. And then we can take that information and go, wow, we really need to step up our game. We really need to do something more reinforcing for our animal. This is not working. And so that goes back to that test your reinforcers by allowing your animal to have control. You're not coercing them because you're giving them freedoms of choice, freedoms of control. And they can choose whether to engage or not engage with you. And when they don't engage with you, that is valuable information. Your animal's not blowing you off. Like, I get this all the time where people are like, well, what do you do when your dog runs away and blows you off? I go back to the drawing board. That is information that is extremely valuable and extremely powerful for me as the teacher to go, wow, I'm apparently not reinforcing enough. I need to go back. I need to go back and think about this. I need to build up reinforcement so that when we're in this situation again, I'm a more valuable entity here, or I hold a more valuable entity or reinforcer that my animal chooses then to stick with me and doesn't run off the next time, because running off apparently was a higher value for a reinforcer than sticking with me. And like I said, multiple reinforcers are at play. Your animal's not blowing you off. It's not personal. Your animal's behavior is not personal, and they're not just blowing you off. There's valuable information. Go back, find your reinforcers, reevaluate, and come back again. When you struggle with these things, this is why there are professionals. This is why I do what I do, is so that I can look at that situation with you and I can help you assess what our reinforcers are at play and how are you going to utilize that to get the behavior change that you're looking for. It's that simple and that complex. So, quick recap. What is a reinforcer? It's anything that's going to build or strengthen behavior. How do you test your reinforcers, or how do you know if a reinforcer is at play or working? You'll see that behavior repeat or strengthen. Who defines what is reinforcing? The learner, the animal, the dog. And then we have our final discussion point of kind of putting it all together and what is bribing versus what is reinforcing. Bribing is putting the reinforcer, if you will. And then we talked a little bit about coercion, and I usually am putting that into the bucket of limiting options. Now, you can't, of course, give your dog the entire world of decisions to make, because they are still a dog and there are limitations to what decisions they can make well. So we talked a little bit about coercion and providing the opportunity. I think the main decision that needs to be put on the table whenever you're engaging with your animal is allowing them to say no. That gives you at least 2 degrees of freedom. You have the option to work, or you have the option to say no and go back to whatever you were doing. The idea being that reinforcers are always, 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 always at play. No matter what you're doing with your animal, there is probably a reinforcer at play, and it would be smart on your part to find out what those reinforcers are that are at play, label them, put cues on them where necessary, or where it works, and it influences every behavior in every way. So the more you understand what that reinforcer is, how it works, who decides what the reinforcer is, your job is just to notice the reinforcers. Your dog is going to decide and tell you what those reinforcers are. Thank you for watching. This is a fun topic, an in-depth topic. Hopefully I didn't completely overload your brain with too much information. Please go in and download our free worksheet for determining your reinforcers and providing reinforcement cues. So we have a reinforcement worksheet that will be linked in the video description. Subscribe if you want more content, and I will see you in another video. Thanks for watching.